Hello friends, today I bring you the review of chapter number 8 of the Baki manga. In the previous chapter, we saw the end of the fight between Kosho and Hanma. The fight was stopped, but it could be said that Kosho took the victory thanks to his cutting technique. Remember that his fight against Jack Hanma is getting closer, and this battle with Hanma served to show Kosho's new technique. It will be interesting to see what Jack does to deal with those dangerous and sharp fingers that can cut almost anything. Well, this week we have a color cover showing an illustration of Baki. On the cover of this chapter, there is a text that seems to be the title of the chapter. It says, Father and Sons. On the first page, we see that the scene takes place on the streets of Tokyo, where we observe how the passersby seem very surprised. All of them had their eyes focused on something that caught their attention. To be more specific, they were looking at two men walking in the middle of the street. On the next page, we can see two pairs of very striking legs. One pair was really large and muscular, and the other seemed a bit smaller compared to the man walking beside. The man with the long legs wore sports sneakers, and the other man wore black casual shoes. As expected, the long legs belonged to Jack Hanma, and walking beside him was his father, the strongest creature on earth, Yujiro Hanma. To the surprise of many, we see them walking together very casually, a scene I never thought I'd see at this point in the story. This makes us wonder what happened to Jack's rivalry with his father. Incredible but true, in a completely unexpected twist, we find father and son walking side by side as if it were the most normal thing in the world. This very casual image contrasts enormously with the intensity that has always characterized their relationship. Until recently, it seemed that Jack despised Yujiro with all his being, and seeing them this way was unthinkable. I don't know how they got to this point, but for now, I will continue analyzing the chapter, and at the end, I will give you my opinion about it. The two giants walked among the crowd looking so imposing that they radiated a sense of danger, yet they appeared completely calm. The one who really captured all the looks was Jack. His height was noticeable, but even more impressive was his excessive musculature and bulky volume, giving the impression of enormous strength. His presence there could be compared to that of an adult in costume at a children's party. He looked like one of those huge suits used in fairs and parades. Despite this, his expression was not joyful at all, but quite the opposite. He looked very serious and thoughtful. Jack, with his height, towered over anyone else on that street. He stood out significantly in that environment, and even made Yujiro look small. His arms and legs were noticeably thick, but clearly not due to fat, but to incredibly well-developed muscles. This was evident even at a glance. Despite his incredible size and weight, it was safe to think that those huge legs surpassed those of any Olympic sprinter. Jack had not only trained his strength and bite, but had also improved his speed to move faster and better react to enemy attacks. Jack was very different from his father, who despite being a big and muscular man, looked very small and skinny compared to that giant. The passersby couldn't help but turn their heads and stare at them. Yujiro is by no means a dwarf. This man is over 190 centimeters tall. But what makes him look like a giant, a being that instills fear in all who see him, is the threatening aura he emits just by walking. This is something that everyone could feel, even the blind and deaf. Yujiro has supernatural fangs, more similar to those of a carnivorous animal than to those of a normal human. His pointed eyebrows show his strong character, and the reddish hair has characterized him since birth. It's as if his blood flows, even in his scalp. To ordinary people, Yujiro Hanma was like an angry, fierce lion that gave them goosebumps just by looking at him. Yujiro's skin was also very special. It had a metallic shine and seemed simply impenetrable. So, there was no doubt that, although Jack was more eye-catching due to his large body, he could not completely overshadow his father Yujiro, who, despite being smaller, possessed an aura that made him the center of attention no matter who was by his side. Seeing them walking together was like watching two lions walking in the middle of the street. After walking for a while, Jack speaks to his father and confesses that, despite his increased height, he had fully recovered his physical condition. His speed and strength were at their peak. Yujiro makes a face, as if that was obvious to him. The ogre mentions that he had noticed this by his posture and way of walking, as it was clear that it was not yet perfect, but he was still keeping up. From his posture, he could tell that his muscles and bones had already synchronized, as if he had always been that tall. Jack, immediately upon hearing these words, turns to look at his father in amazement, as if asking what he meant by that and how he had been analyzed just by watching him walk. In fact, how he could have noticed, that if he hadn't even looked at him closely for more than a second. Yujiro mentions the great importance of choosing and maintaining a winning position when facing someone, a reference to the times of swordsmen. He says that you should always place yourself at a level higher than your enemy. This was one of the fighting tips used by the legendary swordsman Musashi Miyamoto. Yujiro tells Jack that it has always been believed that greater height gives a greater advantage in combat. The ogre says that this is certainly a logical advantage, which no one can deny. Having a larger physical size makes things easier, but it can also put you at a greater disadvantage if you don't know how to properly use such a large physique. Jack ponders for a second on his father's words. It was the first time his father had given him a life advice. He asks Yujiro what he thinks about this supposed advantage. He asks what he thinks about his new height, as they both knew it was artificial, just like his teeth were. Jack wanted to know if this displeased him. These two continue walking a few more steps without saying a single word. They both walked for a while until the silence became a bit uncomfortable. But suddenly, Yujiro says some very interesting words. Yujiro tells his son Jack that what he had done was something not just anyone would be capable of. These words caught Jack off guard. He was expecting an insult, a mockery, or perhaps a criticism. Yujiro tells Jack that he must have endured many criticisms and mockeries from countless people throughout his life due to the methods he used to become strong. Yujiro says that none of those people would have the courage and endurance to undergo the harsh training he went through, not to mention the impressive pain he felt as his bones grew and were stretched by those rough machines. But what caught his attention the most was the fact that no other person with a thirst for victory had ever thought to focus on training a part of their body like the jaw. Yujiro tells Jack that he was now sure he had mastered the sacred art of biting, a powerful weapon used since the birth of the human race. After hearing those words, Jack stops dead in his tracks and stands still for a few seconds. He remains motionless in the middle of the street, staring at the ground, while Yujiro turns his gaze and realizes that his son has stopped walking alongside him. Jack begins to sweat and with a smile tells Yujiro that this is the first time he has praised him. This was praise from a ruthless father. Yujiro had praised his unwanted son for the first time, and this managed to strike Jack's spirit so much that it made him sweat with excitement. This is how the chapter ends. Well, friends, although it was just a simple father-son walk, this chapter has been one of the best in the entire series. I definitely did not expect to see such a casual exchange of words between Jack and Yujiro. Ithageki surprised us with this epic chapter and hit us in the face with those beautiful dialogues where Yujiro sincerely praises his son Jack. Seeing Jack sweating with excitement is very moving because it shows the great evolution he has had as a character. Remember, his only goal in life had always been to beat his father to avenge all the suffering he caused his mother in the past. All this makes me think that Jack has put aside that vengeful mentality but remains firm in his goal of defeating his father. Everything Yujiro said is true. The hard effort and work of Jack over all these years is something that possibly none of the people who mocked him would have been able to endure. Yujiro recognized all that effort and praised him for having the courage to get to where he is now. It's crazy to say this because we've seen Yujiro express his disappointment in Jack several times. He said his blood was impure and that he wasn't on the same level as Baki. It's exciting to see that Yujiro finally recognized Jack as a fighter worthy of his respect and no longer sees him as an impure blood loser. It could be said that both have had great development and now are two men who can speak with respect in front of each other. As a curious fact, more than 20 years have passed since the last time Yujiro and Jack exchanged words. The last time they spoke face-to-face was in the Maximum Tournament, and that part of the manga was released over 20 years ago. Then they met again on that occasion where several fighters went to the military base where Pickle was captive. However, on that occasion, Yujiro did not even notice Jack's presence, and they did not exchange a single word. I really like this facet of Yujiro. He is no longer the guy who goes around hitting people for no reason. Since his encounter with Nomi and Kihaya, he has been shown to be a different man than he used to be at the beginning of the story. I wonder if his fight with Baki had something to do with all this change Yujiro has been showing over the years. I really would have liked to see the beginning of this walk between father and son. I wonder if Jack personally sought out his father or if they met in the street by sheer coincidence. It would be crazy if it was Yujiro who invited Jack for a walk. Anyway, Don't forget to leave me your opinion in the comments box. I want to know what you thought of this chapter. And well, friends, thanks for watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you liked it. I hope you have a nice day or night. See you soon.